So anyway, unfortunately, we're going to have to step it down on the song, and we're going to settle for Sam.
All right. I was asked to do this last week, so I thought I'd do one you all know. Let's do an old country western song that I'm sure is one of your favorites and maybe one of mine. It's entitled, "Your Teeth Are Like the Stars Above," because they come out every night. On three. You don't know that. I don't know. Oh, heathens. All right. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the ocean white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Ray Fisher, can you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sam, can you lead us in the invocation?
Yes, sir. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the gift of your grace and for the gift of each new day. Help us to worship you, reflect your love with each step we take. Bless this food for the nourishment of our body and us to thy faithful service. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Right, you're looking at my passion. I was talking to Sam and saying, well, you got the grandfather of youth soccer sitting next to you. So again, this is quite an honor because Knoxville has needed this sort of excitement about the sport of soccer for many, many years. And we're just extremely excited that their first game is tomorrow. I'm sure Sam will discuss that, but I'm really honored to introduce Sam Weisbrod, who is the Executive Director for the One Knox Collective, which is under the umbrella of the One Knoxville Soccer Club. Sam's background is he's been involved with professional and grassroots soccer for the past 10 years. Before moving to Knoxville, he was with the Chicago Fire, which for those that follow MLS, it's one of their main and one of the original soccer teams from 30 years ago, I believe now, 30 years ago, hard to believe. He was with Chicago Fire for 8 years, and there he was working on developing one of the largest adult recreation soccer businesses in the United States. Sam and his family moved to Knoxville 2 years ago for the opportunity to start the professional team. And again, he's been part of building the One Knox from the very beginning. And again, last year they were in the USL 2, which I guess for those that don't know is probably like baseball, Class A, similar to it. And now they are up to the professional level, which I guess would be closer to AA. Baseball for those, it's USL 1, which is very, very close to hopefully becoming someday. I'm sure that's a dream of all of ours that we would have an MLS team here in Knoxville. Sam, again, has a rather large family and is getting larger as I understand. He's married to a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and one on the way. Woo. Now, how he's had time to focus on soccer and develop a family at the same time, Sam, we're very excited that you're helped to populate our Knoxville base. We're excited that. And Sam and his family live in West Hills, and they love their time in Knoxville, which we all understand. So without any further ado, Sam, please.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me. So I'll tell you guys a bit about myself beyond that, and then jump into this One Knox thing. My parents were missionaries. I was actually born in Botswana, lived there for 5 years. Later moved back and lived in Mozambique, spent some time in Brazil. As a kid, playing barefoot soccer in the street until it was too dark to see the ball, that's what I love to do. And before I could even speak the local language sometimes, I could use the game of soccer to connect with people, you know? So it's a huge part of my identity, that kind of bringing people together through sports. Fast forward, I ended up getting a master's degree in international studies. I thought I was going to go work in Africa for a nonprofit, but this professional soccer kind of pathway stepped in about 10 years ago. I started working for the Fire, building an adult recreational soccer program there, and I found out that I was an entrepreneur. Like I didn't really know this until I was kind of in those shoes, but I found out I was very entrepreneurial and I just wanted to build this business. And I did so over 8 years, scaled it up to be one of the largest in the country, and then started to look around and say, you know, what's next? I don't think I want to be an adult rec soccer guy for the next 30, 40 years. But then through a mutual friend, I met Drew McKenna from Chicago. His wife was from Knoxville, and he was moving down here with her, and he looked at the landscape and he said, why isn't there pro soccer here? There's pro soccer in cities all across the country of this size. Chattanooga, just down the road, has 2 pro soccer teams, almost exactly the same size market. And so he reached out to the USL, and they said, actually, Knoxville is one of our top 3 cities in the country that we think should have pro soccer from a size standpoint and doesn't yet. So Drew kind of had the spark there. I came down here, we went on a hike in the Smokies. That was my job interview, probably the best job interview I've ever had. And then, yeah, you know, he just told me about this emergent place, Knoxville, Tennessee, that's really taken off. The sport's taken off across the country, obviously, for those kind of in the soccer landscape. And then the hardest thing to do was convince my wife to move down here. You know, she's from Michigan, I'm from Ohio. We got kids, there's that pull of being close to grandparents, but it was such an opportunity to come down here and build this from the ground up. So yeah, so let me jump into it. So we were struggling to get the sound going, but there's some videos, and I'll just kind of talk over them and probably jump through them pretty quickly. But here's some scenes from this past season, just to kind of give you, you know, a general idea of what one Knoxville looks like. This past season, we played at Maryville College, we played at CAK, we played at West, and Austin East. So it was kind of a traveling road show, but you know, we kind of made the best of it, and we would have 1,800, 2,000 people out at our game. So it was, you know, it was a pretty strong first year in the market. You may recognize 1 or 2 people here. There's Nadeem Gibran, second from the left there. I'm confident, you know, a few of you might already know Nadeem. But, you know, Drew kind of moving in, Drew's the guy in the middle. Drew kind of moving in from Chicago, made some connections locally, and these guys were all partners that kind of helped him launch the team. And then I moved here about 2 years ago in March 2021. And yeah, we kicked it off as Knox Pro Soccer. We didn't have the name One Knoxville. We didn't have the logo at that point. We just basically had a temporary brand, and we were trying to get people involved and kind of build it with the community. I'm not going to go over too much of the history, but we did hire this guy named Matt Wolf from the very onset, who is the preeminent designer in soccer. He's done logos for the Chicago Fire, LAFC, NYCFC. These are kind of like the premier soccer brands in the country, and he created their visual identity. So we hired him, spent a lot of money to bring him in, and it was almost kind of laughable for a team at our level, like a single A baseball team, to spend that much money out of our budget to hire him. But he, of course, came up with this incredible crest. And the trend in soccer nowadays, and a lot of sports teams with their visual identity, is not to necessarily be on the nose about the sport they're in. It's more about kind of civic pride, and especially with soccer teams. So from the start, we felt like there's nothing really locally that is like championing Knoxville. UT, of course, is the state, and the Smokies, the Ice Bears, I think are more about kind of like that family experience and a great time. But there wasn't anything that's like, we're from this place, we love this place, we believe in Knoxville, you know? And we wanted that to really kind of come through in the crest. And then just from like a business strategy perspective, you might just want to put that on a shirt or a hat. You know, you might just be proud of being from here and think it looks good. So that's a bit about kind of the decision there. At the highest level, this is who we are. This is a culture that we're trying to build with One Knoxville. Our vision is to turn Knoxville, Tennessee into the premier soccer city in the United States, which is a bit laughable at the moment. You think of like Portland or Seattle or even Atlanta way before Knoxville, but in order to create big change, we need big goals. Our mission is to really be community oriented, and unfortunately in the United States, soccer is for kids has often been for the kind of like middle to upper income kind of families, and it's really hard for lower income families to play the sport. The best fields, if you look at Knoxville, are kind of on the west side. There's not many on the east and the north side. There's a lot of barriers between kids in underserved areas and playing and getting high quality programming. So we think we're taking a long-term kind of vision approach with this, and we think if we can bring more kids to the game, break down those barriers, and grow the game itself across Knoxville, that's going to be good for the pro soccer team in town from a business perspective. I don't think this is mainstream news yet, but soccer is taking off in this country. It's kind of been the sport of the future now for maybe 20 or 30 years. People have been talking about it maybe since we hosted the World Cup. But if you look particularly at kind of the younger Gen Z demographic, soccer is way more popular than baseball or hockey. And I think a lot of that is because the world's game has been brought here through, it's easier to watch the English Premier League on television on the weekends, or social media has made the world stars like Messi and Ronaldo stars on our phones as well. Video games like FIFA have made it accessible for kids. And now more and more kids think of soccer kind of on the same level as like the NBA or something. So it's a massive tailwind just in the country in general, the sport of soccer. We did a survey of our fans, and this is what we found out about our demographic. They're young, 36 years old is our average age. High, great education, a lot of them have master's degrees, strong earners, there's a lot of young families, and a lot of children. We also found they're really into like hiking and backpacking and outdoors kind of activity. There's a strong overlap there. So this is Mark McGeever. He's our head coach. We brought him in before the last season. He had spent 17 years at Young Harris College in Georgia, but he joined us last year full time at the USL2 level. He's really widely respected, and he was probably overqualified for USL2, but he saw kind of what we were building here and kind of believed in the trajectory of where we were going. So he jumped in. This past season, so USL2, we talk about single A, double A, triple A. USL2 is actually pre-professional, so everything that happened last year, none of the players were paid. It was only a 3-month season. It was completely an amateur league. In fact, it was for like, the USL2 was established for top college soccer players on that summer break. Some of our players were incredibly talented. Some actually got drafted into the MLS. So the quality on the field was high. However, it was a completely amateur league. So it almost felt like we were trying to say we had pro soccer already, but last year we did not. And this year we stepped up. It was a financial outlay to move up to the USL1 level, which is a fully professional tier now. So tomorrow night in our first game, that'll be the first professional soccer game in Knoxville history. We've really been able to leverage the design, the visual identity of the club to do well, kind of selling merch and bringing people in that way. I think even more than any of us could have anticipated, kind of launching this thing, there was already a really strong soccer community locally at the club and high school level, and George knows this. There's already kind of across Metro Knoxville a lot of interest in soccer already. So as we were kind of coming in, 2 guys from Chicago walking around, people were just like, "This is awesome! This is incredible! We want to be part of this," and way more than we ever expected. And we saw this kind of like spike in our community growth, like instantly on social media and our email newsletter. So many people wanted to be a part of it. So we felt like we were kind of tapping in, at this perfect moment here locally. So USL League One is, last year we played just regionally here in the Southeast. USL One is pretty exciting because it's a national league. It's a 7-month schedule. It goes from tomorrow night all the way through October. We'll be playing teams in Wisconsin and California and Arizona, a bunch of other teams in this region as well, but it's a full national league. Every game will be on ESPN Plus. There's a US Open Cup, which is a pretty cool, unique thing in soccer where they take all the professional leagues and you all play across like 6 months for a cup across one tournament. So it's kind of like March Madness spread out over the course of 6 months, and we're going to be part of that as well. So we're playing Memphis. Memphis as a team. We're playing them in a couple of weeks, and then if we win that, we'd have potential to play Nashville SC, which is an MLS team, and that could be at their house, or it could even be here at Regal Stadium. I probably should have started with this earlier on because when I talk to people about pro soccer in this country, it can be kind of confusing. What in the world is MLS and USL? There's so many acronyms going on. I joke with my wife, it's like driving down Kingston Pike and just seeing acronym after acronym of fast food restaurants. But yeah, so the MLS is the very top. We are part of USL 1, which is that third kind of tier. And then above us, there's USL Championship. So everything beneath us, amateur, everything including us and above is professional. In Europe and in everywhere else in the world, there's a promotion relegation system, which is really fascinating, I think, from just an interest in sports perspective. But you can play your way up, or you can play your way down at the end of a season to the league beneath you. And so there's no teams like trying to tank to get draft picks, right? All the teams at the bottom are worried about going down to the league beneath them with lower amounts of television revenue and merchandise revenue and tickets and sponsorships. All of that shrinks dramatically if they get pushed down. So you have this heightened interest at the end of the season in that relegation kind of battle. And of course, the idea of moving up is incredible. It's like a romantic kind of thing for all these teams. You could potentially go from the 5th to the 4th to the 3rd to the 2nd to the 1st, and that has happened before. And this would be incredible for U.S. sports. However, it's really tough to just integrate now because Charlotte paid $300 million to enter the MLS. It's a finite resource, right? There's only a few league spots left, so they paid $300 million to get in. Can you imagine if they got relegated the following season to a league beneath them? You know, their ownership would flip out. It wouldn't be acceptable. So people are trying to figure out here because it creates so much fan interest. So the USL, as you can see already, kind of has a little bit of stratification going, and they're trying to work on a system where USL 1 could connect to Championship. And Championship's a big deal. That's like Oakland, Albuquerque, places that are bigger than Knoxville. And it's a 28-team league, really spread out across the country. And if there is a promotion relegation system, we're knocking on the door. Knoxville could be a place where we're at that kind of tier. MLS, I think, is a different kind of market entirely, kind of ball game. But you never know. I mean, this sport, who knows what the sport could be like in 20, 30, 40 years in this country. So we're in now. We have success now. We'll see how things shake out. So this season, we are playing all of our games at Regal Soccer Stadium at the University of Tennessee, where the women's team plays. It's an awesome venue if you guys have never been there. 3,000 seat capacity, beautiful grass stadium, so that's huge. We're projecting right now about 2,500 people for tomorrow night. We think that's pretty good with spring break and pretty tough opening week, but yeah, all kinds of different, ticket, like from general admission, where you could sit on the grass across the field, or up to like season tickets. We have suites, etc., kind of everything. So I will throw out, if anybody's interested from like a sponsorship partnership perspective, would love to chat, exchange emails, etc. And then, so when we were getting this thing off the ground, we always knew we wanted to kind of have like a social impact. I mentioned the mission, bringing kids to the game from across Knoxville. But we always knew the community, big buzzword, but social impact, would be a big part of our brand and what we want to do here. And then we got kind of plugged into the Austin East team and met their coach and all the players. And this is a couple years ago now, but you know, obviously some tragic incidents happened. You know, a student was killed at the school, and through our connection with the team, the coach ended up telling us, hey, we're not going to be able to play our last 2 games of the season because our opponents don't want to come here. They're like scared to literally come to our stadium. And so we were gutted. You know, no judgment about anybody in terms of safety. You know, obviously do what you think is best for your kids. We were gutted for the kids on Austin East just to take away soccer for them. You know, for them, this is their outlet. And many of them are refugee kids coming here and they're trying to like settle into this country and figure it out. And you know, back to when I was a kid, soccer is a great way to connect and make new friends. And so we reached out to the University of Tennessee and we said, what would you think about hosting them? And they jumped right in. And we hosted that game at Regal. We had 1,500 people there supporting these kids, this high school team. We made it a big deal. Their senior night, we honored them on the field. They boat raced the team 9-0 that they played against. They went from there on. They didn't lose the rest of the season. They won the state championship at their level. A school that had never won a state playoff game previously. And it's like a Disney story what they did and how great the coach and the kids are and that whole community. But outside of that night, having 1,500 people there from across Knoxville connecting through the sport because they believe in community and they believe in loving on these kids and supporting these kids, that validated everything. That was like, oh, okay, this is who we want to be. This is what we want to do beyond, you know, winning championships. So from then on, we were really thinking of, okay, there's 2 pillars to this club. There's the club and there's community. And the club is about winning silverware. You know, we want to win every game. Like we're extremely competitive, but at the same time, you know, we're big believers in the impact we can make in our community through the sport. We have a deal with the city and county to take an old basketball court and flip it into like a little futsal kind of thing. So U.S. Soccer Foundation has a great deal where if you can come up with $100,000, they'll match it and they'll come to your city and they'll do this whole thing where they'll just take an old court and make it into a little soccer court. So this is in Harriet Tubman Park, right behind Vine Middle School, and we just haven't started on this, but we haven't. The city's putting in $50K. We're going to put in $50K. U.S. Soccer Foundation is putting in the rest. We're going to be able to create one of these and program it and just open it up for the community. And so the goal is to do a lot more of those. With my background in adult rec, we always knew we were going to have an adult rec presence here locally, but you know, right now we have around 1,500 players, almost 90 teams playing across 12 different leagues, most nights of the week. And we're kind of taking, Amazon gets a lot of negative, it's kind of pejorative when you use Amazon as a comparison, but they're so good about hitting all these different verticals, right? And we want to hit every soccer vertical, from the littlest kids up, you know, to people 50, 60 years old playing the game. We want to have a touch point there, and we want to connect our brand to it. So this is kind of an example of that strategy for us. So it's not just about the pro soccer, but let's get out there at the grassroots level as well. To that point, there's 2 local youth clubs you guys might have heard of. One's called Crush and Reds. And they came to us this past summer and said, hey, what would it look like if we rolled into one Knox and we basically kind of partnered on the youth soccer space. And so we took them up on it, and we launched this youth club, One Knoxville Youth Club. We'll have tryouts here in May and June. And so we're, again, you know, trying to get into youth soccer, adult soccer, and it's not without friction. You know, like youth soccer is a very kind of competitive political space, and we didn't want to come in here. This wasn't on the roadmap initially because, you know, some clubs don't do this because you don't want to compete locally with established youth clubs and be seen as like our kids are against your kids. You know, you want everybody to buy tickets, of course, and merchandise and be a part of the brand. But we just felt like it was such an opportunity and a platform for us to really focus in on that mission. So we're trying to raise as much money through partnerships as possible to someday the goal is make kind of soccer a public good here in Knoxville. Not that every kid can play for free, but that if you can't afford it, we could find ways to subsidize your play. But very early days on all of this, but it's exciting to be a part And then the roadmap beyond this is professional women's soccer as well. You know, you guys probably heard about, of course, the baseball stadium downtown that's going to be a mixed-use facility that'll be one Knoxville, our soccer club, plus the Smokies. So we'll be playing there in 2025. It's a lot of money to flip that field from baseball to soccer, so we are financially incentivized to have as many events there as possible when it is in a soccer kind of space. So we're going to have, and not just because of that reason, like we really believe in bringing professional women's soccer here as well, but we will have a professional women's soccer team at some point, and then yeah, really building out on the academy side. We announced yesterday the signing of a 16-year-old player to an academy contract, which, not to get in the weeds too much, but basically allows him to train with the professional players, and he's been doing so. And overseas, this is kind of how it works. Like, you get the best 14, 15, 16-year-old kids, and you just throw them in the deep end with the professional team, and you say, you know, can you swim at that level? And it really pushes them up higher. So we're going to offer that kind of pathway through our academy system here to give the best young, promising players a place to really push their development faster. Louisville recently sold a player to a European club for $2 million. They sold another for $1 million. There is a business model here. If kids locally in Knoxville more and more are playing, of course, and there's some promising young talent, you never know how it can impact the business as well. I mentioned the Old City Stadium. You know, I think that's going to be a huge deal for us and for the Smokies, of course. And then the World Cup is coming here in 2026. Everybody in soccer is just talking about how that's going to be kind of like a tipping point for the game in this country. There's going to be 48 teams playing across the United States, Canada, and Mexico. It's just going to be such a moment for U.S. soccer. So there's potential that we could actually host a team here in Knoxville. All those teams need a base camp where they can train for 2 or 3 weeks before the World Cup. So there's potential that we could actually host a team here and have some sort of a connection to the World Cup. That's that. I did, a couple weeks ago, I was giving a presentation to all the parents from Crush and Reds. We're bringing together these 2 youth clubs. And I was giving a presentation about who we are, what One Knoxville is, and our mission, our values. And this was my call to action at the end. I just think it's so interesting to kind of give you guys some more context on soccer globally. But Uruguay, a small country by any kind of measure, 1/100th the size of the United States, 1% the size of the United States, they are a soccer powerhouse globally. They didn't do so well in the last World Cup, but the market value of their team is $590 million. That's about double the market value of the United States team. So we are 100 times the size, but half the value of a country of that size. The next is Iceland, which is minuscule. It's 373,000 people is their population. They're 1/100th the size of Uruguay. But they've been able to compete. They in the Euro 2016, which is the tournament they hold every few years in Europe to find out who the best country is. They made it all the way to the round of 8. They beat England on the way. They qualified for the 2018 World Cup. They tied Argentina in that World Cup 1-1. It's amazing that a country that small, smaller than the East Tennessee population, is able to kind of compete at that level. And then Athletic Bilbao is a club that plays in Spain in La Liga. Their population is almost on par with East Tennessee. What's really interesting about them, they have this cultural thing, they have this methodology at their club where they only take players from the Basque region of Spain. If you're from anywhere else, they will not take you on their club. You have to be from that place. And I mean, of course, imagine like the cultural buy-in and how much the game must mean, locally there. But they've been successful, even though their pool is that small. They've won, what do I have on here, La Liga, I think 8 times, and the Copa del Rey, which is the league tournament, 23 times. Here, East Tennessee, we have 2 current professional players. One is a backup goalkeeper, one's at the end of his career. He might be a starter, he might not. At the USL Championship level, we had an MLS player, he retired in 2021. And we have 2 East Tennessee women on the UT women's soccer team right now. So in that meeting, I was not saying like, look, let's go be Uruguay or let's go be Iceland or anything like that. I just want to I think it's important to note the gulf. Like, there is such a massive gulf between what we think we can be and what we currently are. And I was just trying to, that's all I want to kind of present to these families and to everybody across Knoxville when we think about soccer is like, there's so much opportunity here for growth. And it takes, of course, time. Like these clubs and these countries have all been steeped in this sport for 100 years, right? But there is so much opportunity, and I think it just takes time, and then kind of this culture of soccer growing locally in Knoxville, and that's on those families in the club, that's on us as fans, that's on people like George and myself to kind of grow the game locally. But major opportunity. That's it. Questions?
I got one right off the bat. It's kind of a two-part question or comment. One, the fact that you did what you did with Austin East was really, really impressive. But if I was you guys, I think that you're in the right situation, the right time, because with all the impact of concussions in football, you're getting some parents that will not let their kids play football. Your market is like the schools like Austin East and the other schools. And I would be looking at every school, and if they didn't have a soccer program, then I would be encouraging them and helping them to have, because that's your talent that's coming up. And that's what's going to make you, is the availability. The more talent you got to look at, the more opportunity you're going to have to succeed.
Yeah, 100%. The question and comment was about kind of concussions and the growth of youth soccer, and our ability to kind of connect to those schools and bring in more players. Right now, our roster is composed of players from all over the country and all over the world. There's no Knoxville kid who's going to be on the starting or in the group of 18 players tomorrow night. Leo Santos, the player I mentioned earlier, the 16-year-old on the academy contract, there is a potential pathway there. But yeah, the dream is to have 2-3 kids locally every year who are on that professional team, and then this is just a stepping stone for them to the next level, ideally. But yeah, the only way to get there is to grow the game, for sure. Yeah.
I noticed on your publicity photos you flashed various people, and Santiago Vescovi was one of the ones that was on there worldwide. I'm sure it's big in soccer. What involvement have you gotten from him, or have you reached out to him? How is he involved in the programs?
Yeah, the question is about Santi's connection to the club. His girlfriend is a UT women's soccer player, and we have 2 full-time UT women's soccer players on staff. We're really well connected with the team and the coaching staff there. And he's a big soccer fan himself, and he just did a merchandise shoot for us. But he's been out volunteering at games with us before. Awesome guy. So nice. Yeah.
First I'll say my daughter grew up playing soccer. One of them had a pretty severe concussion playing soccer in high school. But I was going to ask about men's soccer at UT. I know there's some roadblocks there. Gordon's throwing his head over there. I was kind of curious, is there a push? Is there an effort to, you may not, that may be a better question for Gordon.
If you want me to answer that truthfully, I can.
Yeah.
So when Mike Hamilton was the athletic director, Mike came from Clemson, Clemson. You got to say it correctly for people who attended that university. But Mike Hamilton and I were very close to, we had a committee for UT men's soccer. And that was in the 90s, early 2000s, when the football team was doing very well and the coffers were growing and growing. And let's say when the football team took a downturn and we lost the momentum, but we were very, very close. And who knows, if Coach Fulmer had kept winning closer to the pace that he was in the 90s, we would have already had men's soccer. We have currently, I've talked to both Dustin and Britton Colquitt, who played for me growing up, and they both have agreed that once we get back on track, they're going to help contribute to trying to get the soccer back at UT on the board. And I'm trying to get a meeting with Danny White, which is, as you all know, he's very hard to get to. He's very hard to reach. But Drew and I were talking about that earlier, that we had plans years ago, and when the football team, as you know, 15 years of mediocrity, I guess we want to call it, or even worse. But hopefully, with things on track the way they are, we're going to reach back out. Regal Stadium, in fact, I told Drew, and he knows, is built for men's and women's soccer, by the way. it was built that way.
Pretty sure you'd have a Title IX issue, you'd have to add a women's
Oh,
sport.
yes,
to it.
Mark, we battled that, yes.
Questions, how do you add players, just out of curiosity, for a startup League One, third division team? And as a side note, my nephew actually played soccer one summer in Uruguay.
Cool.
So,
Yeah, adding players, one of the benefits of bringing Mark on was his network. He basically had a team ready to go last year. We had 40 players. There's no rules at USL2 about capping the roster. We actually had 40 because none of them are being paid. They can leave at any time. We had players that did leave. But for this season, there are roster rules. Everyone has a salary, and everyone's pretty much on a 1 or 2 year contract. So Mark's connection to the game and his network, he had guys he was picking up the phone right away and kind of calling. And so we have about 8 players that have played for him previously in college on this current team. And for him, that's really big to build that culture in year one, kind of do it his way. And then they're just scouting, watching video all the time. And, everything's kind of like stats based now. You kind of have stats on all the guys, how fast they can run and everything. And so, yeah, they're just kind of reaching out, recruiting. They've been recruiting, over the past year.
How does the dual field work? Because it seems like the season's going to overlap, I would think, baseball and soccer for the Smokies.
Oh, yeah, I wish I could speak to that more. So the question is about at the new stadium, how they're going to flip between baseball and soccer. Yeah, I think that's been the biggest challenge is figuring that out. They've got, I know we have one of the world's leading kind of turf experts involved, a UT professor, Luffman, or I forget his last name, but yeah, they're figuring that out, trying to keep the cost as low as possible for that. And I can't speak too much beyond that.
How many different sizes of soccer fields are there? I mentioned, I heard 2, men and women's, and is there a junior, or how's it?
Yeah, there is like, so soccer's kind of like baseball in terms of the field dimensions, different sizes of fields. There's no kind of like one, you have to have an NFL's field, for example, right? You can have different size baseball fields and different size soccer fields.
There's not a regulation.
There's not an exact regulation. But U.S. soccer has guidelines for different age groups. So if you're a kid, obviously you're not playing on the UT women's kind of field. It's massive. And they have smaller fields, but once you get to 11v11, you can have within a range. There's kind of a max and a minimum.
Appreciate it. That's great. It's good to have a professional first game. In fact, you were in the newspaper. I don't know if you saw that. I think it was yesterday.
Yeah, we've been pushing as much of the newspaper on the news as possible. So.
Yeah. We give a book to Pond Gap Elementary School each week, and we have the speaker sign it. This week, the book is Keeper of the Lost Cities Lodestar, and I'll ask you to sign it. And then we also give a momentum of our appreciation for speaking today. And it's good to have you aboard. It's good to have a professional soccer. It's going to be interesting to see it build.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions or, any other items to cover? And the next week, we've got Nick McBride, Knox County Register of Deeds, as a speaker. And who has the Smoky? Joe, you want to lead us in the 4-way test?
Yeah, we'll do it. Okay, 4-way test. First.
Is it true?
Second.
Is it fair to all concerned?
Third.
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
And fourth.
Will be beneficial to all